Good afternoon. I wanted to talk about two things you may not have heard. Um, one of which is toxic positivity, and the other is depressive realism. The reason I say you might not have heard of them is they're very heavy duty psychological work that I am struggling to plough through at the moment. It's very hard writing, and I wouldn't expect most people to have read it. Depressive realism is a way we've measured since the 70s how people who are prone to depression actually make more logical um, decisions based on much larger criteria. People in 2010, people who had toxic positivity meant that they were giving an avatar of themselves to the world that was so different from how they were inside that they thought they could make the world a better place by acting as if they had complete hope and complete positivity. The difference with these, if people really believe that every knock in life is going to knock that out of them, but people who've had enough knocks in life know full well what's realistic, what's expected, what's reasonable, what's rational. We don't jump to a great idea. Doesn't mean it isn't one. Just means we think it through more. If you have toxic positivity, that tends to end in suicide. It's a very dangerous thing. Because when does the avatar you're trying to present to the world stop being what you want to present to the world? How does that mesh as a conflicting, or do you never stop being an alternate reality to yourself? Because if you come crashing down to real reality, and see, toxic positivity, best way to describe it is there was a schoolgirl in England. She was captain of her sports team. She was head girl. She was headed to Oxbridge, which means Oxford and Cambridge universities. Without doing her A level, she was accepted. She'd taken 300 selfies a day, 7 days a week for 4 years, and she killed herself. She was the most popular, most loved person at school. But through 4 years of toxic positivity, her mind twisted itself so much, she was so depressed that trying to put on this face for the world, it got the better of her and she took her own life. That's the most extreme example of toxic positivity. But you can measure that down quite easily. As to somebody who gets their hopes up and regularly loses them, it's going to be forming sessions, things like coming up with new ideas, ideals. They'll be strong and passionate all the time about various different things because effectively they believe they stop being positive. They are going to have to confront all of the negativity which is in them, which is actually in all of us. We have to accept we have the capacity for everything. Every human has the capacity for everything. Anyone who thinks they don't just haven't been put in that situation. I'll give you an example. You've never spent significant time in captivity in a third world country. I have. Changes your life a bit. Positivity is how many, and so you create multiple avatars, and they even get them confused. They've got so many different online avatars producing a different version of themselves to their assumed audience of oppressed people who want to present versions of themselves to reality rather than take on reality head on. So it's a very important distinction. People with depressive realism will often have been clinically depressed. Now, I'm not suggesting they're going to be very useful for you at their lowest, but at their midsection and upwards, they're very useful because when they look at something, they'll look at it logistically, work out if it works quite quickly, and actually come up with some very good questions for business ideas and business openings. Someone with toxic positivity will just say, "Oh, it's the best idea ever. Go ahead with it," and without taking into factors all of the costs, all of the everything that's involved in it. Someone with depressive realism will take in everything that's involved in it and then say, "Yes, a good idea. Here are the things that are involved in it. Can you provide those?" If the answer is not an immediate no, can you get to a position where you can provide those? And if the answer is still no, then they can't have the idea because it doesn't. You can't get to a position where you can make it a case for it. So toxic positivity is very harmful and rife in society on social media. No one's living their real lives on social media, not even me. I am miserable as I sometimes say I am. But I do keep the ugliness of my life to myself. It's a natural thing to do. But I don't replace it with an avatar of positivity into the world. I couldn't do that. I've had too much damage in 41 years to present a positivity outlook. I don't have huge hope for the future. I have some hope for the future if Donald Trump gets elected, that he might set a few things right. But overall, I'm quite realistic about when we're going to be living under a totalitarian government and how that's going to work and where it will be. I'm well informed on the finances of the protests around the country, the pro-Israel, pro-Hamas protests that are growing in their aggravated assault way. And, it's because I look at things from every single angle, including the negatives. I don't disclude the positives. I leave them there as the idea, and then I look at what's going to make that idea not work. Because if you've got an idea that I can, in one conversation, make not work for you, it's not a good idea. On the other hand, sometimes someone with toxic positivity combining with someone with depressive realism makes actually the best marriage by default. That's been statistically true since 2010, when toxic positivity was first really recognised. It's a very happy team, but you can't go with endless optimism. You're better going off with more pessimism. I'm not suggesting either are the best way to go, but simply put, depressive realism has led to the greatest thinkers of our time, the greatest philosophers and the greatest thinking minds like Elon Musk. He will certainly suffer from depressive realism, so would Jordan Peterson. Anyway, it doesn't matter which side you fit on, because you need someone who fits on the other side, and it's like a scale. So it's not you're not 100% depressive realist and 100% toxic positivity. It takes a long time to get to those ends. At this point here, where there is a bit of a divide, if you can turn that toxic positivity around and someone with you can turn a bit that depressive realism around, you've got a very creative team. So it's not all positives and it's not all negatives, but toxic positivity being presented to the world is unfortunately one of the main sources of suicide on social media. So that is negative in and of itself, but the abilities and the mindset can be harnessed for much, much more productive use. So I'll leave it there. If you like the video, please don't feel shy about subscribing, liking, and taking the notification bell. I won't blame you. I like making it. Otherwise, it's always a pleasure and never a chore. You be lucky. I'll be good. I'll see you soon.